Today's video is brought to you by the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy, dedicated to the collection, preservation, and advancement of historically significant blacksmiths and their practice. It's been a while since we've taken a look at working on this Yellin-inspired gate project, and today I want to get back to it by working on these long twists, particularly this one center bar that extends above the top piece and has this scrolled element. This is a three-piece forge weld, and we'll take a look at doing that forge weld as well as doing these long twists and a lot of straightening, because these things really need a lot of work to keep them straight. No matter how careful you are, they want to get all wonky and wobbly. So without further ado, let's do the twist. For this twist, I'm using 1/2 by 3/4 inch material, and I want to run a groove down the 1/2 inch side. So it's the short side. I'm going to run this all the way down the twisted area before I do the twist. Initially, I'm just going to lay this out cold, and that way I can get a line I can follow again hot. Chisel will need to be sharpened from time to time because the cold metal is harder on the hot cut than doing hot metal, but it's just fine. You don't need a special chisel for this kind of thing. As long as you make good tools in the first place, this ought to work out. While the treadle hammer is ideal in my mind for this, you could certainly do this under a fly press or at the anvil with a striker, or even with a hand hammer. It's just going to take a little bit longer. But unless you're doing big projects like this gate, the time it takes to chisel a line down a twist probably isn't going to be that big a deal. There will be constant straightening on this. Every step of the way is going to bend and bow and twist a little bit in ways you don't like. And it's easier to keep it straight than it is to let it all build up and magnify into a real mess and then have to straighten it when it's done. All that work just gives me a line that I can follow hot. I'm going to go back through, repeat the process with the bar up to heat, and make that a nice deep chisel mark. If you're going to take the time to make a chisel line, make it deep enough you can see it later. I frequently get questions about the orientation of the chisel blade with the handle. A lot of people like the idea of a 45-degree offset, and while that's convenient, keeps your hand away from the heat, I think that's a lot harder to cut a straight line with. The blade being in line with the handle gives you a really good reference, and it's real easy to steer it that way. With it off at 45, all you've got is that little 1-inch wide chisel, or however wide your chisel is, and that's a little bit harder to cut straight. If you like that style of chisel, there's no reason not to do it, but I prefer them in line. Although once you've established the cold layout, using one that's offset would be just fine, because you now have a groove that you're going to index in, and you don't have to line it up by eye quite so much. I say the hot cutting is much easier. It goes a lot faster. It's just a matter of keeping it hot and keeping your tool cool. So cool your chisel regularly as you're working to keep from deforming the edge. Taking the time to set up a work stand to hold one end of the bar really helps with this. Ideally, you have a stand on both ends of the vise so you can set the bar down and then clamp the vise without having to try and balance the bar. But I'm running out of stands because I need stands pretty much at every step of this operation. Guess I'm going to have to make some more or find some that are being used elsewhere. But at least one stand does help. Yeah, I also want to have the torch set up and ready because things never twist evenly, and you're going to have some spots that are a little cold and don't twist so fast, and the torch is a good way to heat those up and make them twist a little bit tighter without over twisting the hot areas. You can also pour water over the hot areas, but I find heating the cold areas works better. If it cools off too much and isn't twisting easily, take another heat. Not going to hurt anything to take multiple heats on an area you're twisting. Unless, of course, you're getting that tight area too hot and it over twists. Just keep an eye on it, cool it down if you need to, and use the torch to heat it up if you need to. None of this is particularly difficult. It just requires attention to detail and being a little bit methodical about the whole thing. I'm using a sample piece of the twist to check and make sure I'm getting my twist even. And this little short piece thing gives me a good reference that I can just use incrementally along the longer bar as I twist it. Again, straightening is absolutely vital. That's almost as big a part of this as the twisting is the constant straightening. Matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I spent more time straightening these bars than I did actually doing the twist sections. Now, some people will say that they like to put a twist in a piece of tubing to keep it straight, and there's certainly some validity with that idea. The problem is you can't see your twist if it's down inside a piece of tubing, and you don't know if you're getting an even twist. You're just going on faith that you're going to count a certain number of twists and it's going to come out even. I would rather have the bar out where I can see it, where I can compare my twist, where I can take incremental heats as I need to improve what I'm doing, and just deal with the straightening issues later. Another risk would be if it does want to twist and get crooked, you could actually end up jamming it into the piece of tubing. I don't know if that's a real problem or not, but it's something I would be concerned about. Now, I have seen some big mechanical twisters that use like the gearbox from an old Willys Jeep or something like that to twist things cold, and that would probably make a real even twist and do this very nicely. But I don't have anything like that, and I certainly don't have room for it, so I don't think I'm ever going to worry about it. I also don't do long twists very much. In general, I think twists can be overdone and they become kind of a cliche, but the original Yellin Gate had these long twists, so I wanted to make sure that I did my best to replicate that in this. It was one of the features I liked about that original gate. Looks like things are lining up well on that one long section. Well, that gets the longer end twisted. I've let these cool. I've got my dimension from this end of the twist to this end where I'm going to have a tenon exactly right. I'm going to leave a little bit of a straight section now that passes through the center of this that will get a sheet metal panel over it, so that doesn't need a twist, and it'll be easier to attach the panel if the bar remains straight. So now I'm going to lay out for the next section of twist, and this is a shorter section, so I don't need anywhere near as much bar for this twist. It'll actually be easier. Based on my test pieces, I know this is going to pull in 3/4 of an inch, so I need to allow an extra 3/4 of an inch for what I'm going to chisel and ultimately twist. Now this looks just like it did on the other end, so I'm not going to bore you and make you watch all this chisel work again. Going to get a layout line cold, then I'm going to take it to the forge, heat it up, and deepen that line with the chisel, and then we'll twist. I'd like to take a moment and thank the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy for sponsoring today's video. The mission of the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy is to promote excellence in blacksmithing. And this gate represents my step towards being a better blacksmith, really trying to embrace a lot of the things I have wanted to do for years, and resources that the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy is going to be making available in the future are really going to help with projects like this. Unfortunately, the floods and the devastation from Hurricane Helene has kind of put a damper on that. One of the key members, George Dixon, was lost in the floods. And while that loss is devastating, they are still moving forward and they are still planning to recover from that. And they're going to be able to make some resources available to blacksmiths to help further educate blacksmiths and allow anybody that's interested to elevate the craft and to do better work. So thank you to the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy for not only sponsoring this video, but several of the videos in this series. I really appreciate their support, and even more so, I appreciate the encouragement to do this kind of work. One of my oldest blacksmithing friends, Mark, came down for a few days. He had a show at a local gallery, and there was a little artist reception he needed to be present for. So he came down earlier that day, and we spent 3 or 4 hours in the shop, and he really helped get these first set of twists straight. He does a lot more big work as well as sculptural work, and really had some insights on how to straighten this. We worked a little under the fly press, we worked a little bit with a block on the anvil, used the stump, rawhide mallet. Some of it was done cold and some of it was done hot, but with persistence and a lot of double checking and 2 sets of eyes to decide what was straight and what was crooked, we finally got these things wrangled into place. Mark also likes using a white surface. He uses a painted piece of OSB or particle board, plywood, something like that. I had a white board we used, and you can target along the long bar and look at that white surface, and it really helps you see what is it as it twisted better than looking across dark cluttered surfaces in the shop. So that's a good tip I'll remember for future projects. If you'd like to see more of Mark's work, you can find him on Instagram at Evolution Ironworks. I'll put a link down below to his Instagram, and you can see some of his sculptural work and railings over there. Now before I do the shorter twist section at the top end of the bar, I want to take care of that forge welded element. And that starts by drawing the end out to an even 4-sided taper. This will be the very center point of the gate, so I want to get that right now. It won't be very easy to do once the scrolls are on there. Then I have 2 bars that are 1/4 by 3/4, and I need to taper those out, and these will become the scrolls. This is mostly a flat taper, although it does taper a little bit in width as well, but it doesn't come to a point. Looks like a point here under the power hammer, but that will spread out before I'm done. As always, you don't have to have power tools to do this stuff. It's just a little faster, a little more efficient, easier on my shoulders and elbows as I get older. So I prefer to do these things with a power hammer, treadle hammer, press, whatever it is that makes my life easier. If you don't have that equipment in your shop, you certainly don't need it. It's just nice if you do. Kind of like in the real world, you can walk, you can ride a bike, you can take public transportation, or you can own your own car. And if you own your own car, you can own a very simple economy car, you can own a luxury car. Lots and lots of options that all get you to the same place. Now, if you're hearing any chit-chat in the background, me and Mark talking, that's largely irrelevant to the project. It's just two guys talking in the shop. So don't feel like you're missing out on anything or feel like any of that is important lessons that go with the project. It's just idle chit-chat. Induction forge is wonderful for getting a nice isolated heat on this, and we'll do a quick forge weld. Light rapid blows of the hammer sets the weld and gets it pretty well finished. There's not much more to do here other than bring the bar shape back down to that 1/2 by 3/4 so that it fits, and we can just do that at a welding heat under the power hammer. Unfortunately, I do draw this down a little bit thin, but that thin section is going to be hidden by the top rail of the gate, and I don't think it's going to be an issue.
I don't. No. I think it's got potential, but it needs work.
But with that all taken care of and refined the best I can, it's time to start twisting that section. And here again, having some help in the shop really makes this easier to get into the vise. Mark can grab that with a pair of tongs and hold it at the right height. And then we can tighten the vise and get on with the twist. As far as twisting goes, this is just exactly the same as the other end of the bar was. Bring it up to heat and twist the hot section, doing it in steps. This will take 2 or 3 incremental steps to do this long twist. Straighten it after each one. This 2x4 block isn't going to last beyond this project, but it's working pretty well. We talked about it making a little metal frame with a hardy shank that you could drop a 2x4 in. Then that frame stays the same and you just replace the piece of wood depending on what you need. And you could use it for a lot of different things that way. It's something I probably need to take care of. Wouldn't be that hard to make. Mostly a little welding project. Unfortunately, that forge welded element does not want to clamp in the vise very well, and it kind of twists funny as it pops out here. And this is going to be hard to fix. It's going to show a little bit in the finished piece, but not badly. It just kind of deforms everything. But we will persevere, and we will get this done. I have to say that's one thing I've noticed about this nice massive vise is it does not hold as well as I thought it might. You can clamp it up tight, but the jaws are fairly narrow in the height of the clamping portion, so there's not a lot of surface area in there to clamp. And I may try to make some sort of jaw liner that takes care of that, something that's at least 1 inch tall. This is only about a 1/2 inch in there. And of course, the torch is right in the way. For work like this, I really do have kind of a small shop, and things aren't ideal. It'd be nice if the vise was right in the middle of the room. It'd be nice if the torch was not right there next to it. But we can make this work, and we will get this done. I'm not going to let the fact that things are a little bit tight and it's hard to work around some of this stuff keep me from getting the project completed. Unfortunately, I can't twist this going the other direction in the vise because my tool cabinet would be in the way of this longer twisting wrench. a lighter weight twist that I could use a shorter handled wrench, I could twist on the other end, and that might improve it a little bit. But this heavier bar needs the longer handled wrench, so I'm forced to work in that one area. Did I say we did a lot of straightening? I think I said that, but whether I did or not, it bears repeating. Straightening is a constant issue, and we straighten this over and over and over again.
He does come when I ask for help, though. He's been over to help me with move some stuff.
Too hard right there in your last hit. Well, maybe not.
Now it's time to work on the scrolls. It's a little fiddly to get in there and get both ends moving opposite of each other without one being in the way of the other one. But again, with a little perseverance and a lot of fiddling around, we can get these. It's another one of those things that if I did this kind of work more often, I would start to develop some tricks for getting in there and working on scrolls that are going both ways like this. But between hammer, anvil, and an assortment of scrolling tongs and scroll wrenches, bending forks, things like that, we will eventually get this to look pretty much the way I want it.
Somebody's made thousands of them.
Yeah.
As I work on this and I'm bringing one side down a little bit further than the other side, I actually kind of like the asymmetrical appearance that I get at times. Really provides for some interesting design insights that may be applicable to another project in the future. Yeah, hard to say at this point, but it's something worth considering. This is pretty much what I'm after. I think I'm probably going to do a little bit of controlled heating with the torch after all this is cool and do little adjustments. There are a few little kinks, a few little flat spots, and heating in the forge just doesn't give me the controlled heat I need to fix those. The last thing we need are tenons on this, so I'm going to mark my tenons, and then I'm going to put a little cut in with the angle grinder so I know right where I want my shoulder to be. You could do this with a chisel or butcher or something like that, but I find the angle grinder working cold gives me a lot of control, and I don't have to worry about getting a chisel cut off. Because my twist runs a little over, I want to grind those corners off, and that's just a simple matter of grinding. If my twist had been exactly the right length, that wouldn't have been an issue. This gives me the ability to rough in the tenon under the power hammer. Then I'll go to a set of tenoning dies. The first position in these dies kind of sets the shoulder a little bit and leaves a fat tenon, and then the second section of the die is the tenon the exact size that I want. This may take 2 or 3 heats to get it exactly right. It doesn't always forge down as far as you might like the first heat. But once it's forged down the way you want it, it's time for a monkey tool and put a shoulder on that. These are 1/2-inch tenons. In the finished assembly, I will actually thread these so we can temporarily assemble everything with nuts and hold everything tight. Take one off at a time to set the tenon. We'll look at that in detail more when we get to that point. Boy, this thing is really starting to look like a gate. The only major elements left to forge are the 2 figureheads, and I've got material prepped for that. So the next video on this will be about forging those figureheads. They will attach to these lower bars. I don't want a long bar, so I've got the figureheads on a shorter bar to start with. And all of that will attach in between these 2 center rails here. But that's for another video. I want to thank Mark from Evolution Ironworks for coming out and helping me with this gate for nearly 2 days. Made a huge difference, has helped straightening things, getting all the tenons to fit right, and getting the little details ready to assemble has really brought this together so I can see what this gate's going to look like. Otherwise, I'd probably still have another week to do all that stuff myself. But it does pay to have friends in the blacksmithing community. Not only does it get things done faster, but it's a lot of fun to work with other people sometimes. So thanks again, Mark, for coming out, and thank you to the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy for sponsoring today's video. In the meantime, I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop. Have fun, stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.